It's time for another Dice Tower review with the Game Boy Geek.
Hello there, my friends. It's the Game Boy Geek here. Hey, today we're going to be doing some big-time business, some big-time finance. We're going to be taking over corporations of oil and shipment and real estate and automobiles, all these different types, and we're going to be forming conglomerates of these corporations and trying to be the one with the most money at the end. We're talking about a classic here, a Sid Sackson classic called Venture. This is recently reprinted by Griffin Games. It's part of the Sid Sackson trilogy series that came out. The grandfather of game design, Sid Sackson, does this live up to his name and the hype that I've heard about this game. I'll show you how it's played. It's 2 to 6 players, plays in about 45 minutes, and it's a hand set collection, hand management type of game with a little bit of a take that component. So let's see how it's played. I'll see you on the other side. In Venture, you're trying to take over corporations of different industries, and then you're trying to form them into conglomerates. So just to show you that in the game, there's 6 different industries of corporations that you'll be taking over. Oil is brown, railroads is red, real estate's teal, shipping is blue, green is automobiles, and orange is steel. At the beginning of the game, 5 random cards will come out and be started. And let's make this look a little more random. There we go. So maybe that's the start of the game there. And everyone is dealt 7 cards that have, these are called resource cards, that they'll be able to use to spend money and take action. So let's talk about how a player's turn works. Each player starts with 7 cards of these resources. And there's money and there's some other cards I'll show you later. But let's say this was my starting hand. I would be holding it secretly. And we see 10 million. We have 16 million. Also, it's really cool that they put a lot of the old, well-known rich people on some of these cards, and the card quality here is really good. It's that nice linen finish. The cards feel really good. Now we have big amounts like 10 million, for example, Andrew Mellon. We have 16 million here. But then on the smaller bills, you'll notice there's some symbols. And that's because the smaller bills can be put together as sets. Anytime you have a matching symbol, so there's 3 different symbols, triangle, square, and circle. If you have a matching set of at least 2 of these with different denominations, so in this case I have 3 circles, they're all 3 different denominations, and we look at any of the cards that has any symbol, it will tell us. This says 2 equals 16 million, 3 is 32, and 4 is 64. So in this case we have 3 matching symbols of different denominations, so 3, so it's 32. So these 3 cards, even though they're small, is actually worth $32 million of buying power. That's huge. And so this is the money, and we're going to be spending that money to buy, to take over these corporations. And that's one of the main actions that you take in this game. There's really 3 main actions. The first one, taking over corporations. Now you can take as many actions as you want on your turn, and you can take the same actions as many times as you want. So we see how much each of these are worth. So what we have here is, if you remember, I have 3 of these cards which are worth 32 because of the thing there, and then we have the 16 million, okay? So I have 48 million between these. Now, I see 20 million, 16 million, 12 million. I could buy all 3 of those for this exact amount, which actually happens pretty rarely. So I'm going to discard those cards and buy these 3, take over these 3 corporations. Now, how this works is, now these are on my side here, and these are they get pulled into my board or my sort of play area. Now, what you're really trying to do is not just buy and take over these corporations, but form conglomerates. How conglomerates get formed is you have to have different industries in the conglomerates. So you can never have 2 railroads, let's say, in the same conglomerate. But what I can do is I can put these cards together, and by doing that, this forms a conglomerate. Anytime there's 2 corporations together, you can form a conglomerate, as long as they're different industries. Again, you could never have 2 of the same industry, let's say, in a conglomerate. There has to be always different ones. And since there's 6 different industries, the most corporations you can ever have in one conglomerate is 6. The second part of this to note is you see these letters, and in the rules they just call them letters. I like to refer to them thematically as markets because it makes more sense. Now, when you form a conglomerate, the second rule is, the first one obviously was you need to have them different industries. The second one is they all have to have at least one letter in common. And I just say markets because it just thematically makes more sense. So we have 3 A's. but we also see that it has 3 Ds. This is really good because anytime you can match multiple letters in every corporation conglomerates, it helps you in scoring that we'll talk to you about later. So on our turn, we took over 3 corporations, and we made a conglomerate of 3 corporations where all 3 of them having 2 markets or 2 letters. Once I'm done with my turn, I basically fill this back up to 5, and I then draw 2 more cards of these capital cards, which help me out, as you saw, as money and some other things. Then it would be the next player's turn. Now about the money, when I paid exact amount, which doesn't happen often, most of the time you're going to pay more than, and you never get change back. So you're trying to always be as efficient as possible with your money because you're never getting any change back. Also, if you didn't want to make a move, you can always discard a card and then take 2, and that's basically your turn because you always take 2 at the end of your turn no matter what you've done. So taking over corporations and forming conglomerates is 2 of the main actions you can take in the game. The other action that you can take is using one of these special cards called a proxy fight card. These proxy fight cards come in 3 different types. We have 1 times, half times, and 1.5 times. And what that means is it says you can take over somebody else's corporation, one of your opponents, for the amount on the card times whatever these are. So half, 1, and 1.5. Let's see what that looks like. So we look at my opponent's conglomerate, and they have started one of themselves. And when you proxy fight, you can steal or take over any corporation that's the top one in any of their conglomerates, meaning I can't take any of these, but the top one I can take. And it's 24 million as face value. So obviously, if I play the half, it's going to be 12 million. And I could do that, and vice versa with all the other prices. So I could basically spend this. If I had this card, I'd play this as one of my actions on my turn. I would pay half of this amount, which is 12, and I would then take this and put it in one of my corporations or conglomerates. Ooh, and it just so happens that, of course, the reason why I bought that card is because this one has A and D as well. Now I've got 4 there that have A and D in it. So that's proxy fighting as one of the actions you can take during your turn. Now, before I get to the last type of action that you can take, I want to show you that one of these, when you draw these cards at the end of your turn, your resource cards, in the whole deck, there's 2 of these profit cards. And this indicates scoring is going to happen for that round at that moment. Now, here we see profits exposed at once. So that person would stop the game and we'd start scoring. And we see here that depending on, you only score for conglomerates. Corporations on their own, like if I had this real estate one on its own with nothing else, it would score me nothing. You only score when you have conglomerates of corporations of 3 or more. So in this case, we have a conglomerate of 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you have at least 1 letter, that would normally be worth 3 million points. But in this case, we have 2 letters on all 4 of them. And in that case, you would double that. So I would have 6 points. If you had 3 letters, you'd triple it, and so on and so forth. So that's how the scoring would work. And this is just tallied on a piece of paper somewhere. You don't actually get cards for the points. You're just keeping track of it. And then we would score the other person, and we'd keep running total, and then the game would resume. There's only 2 of these. However, when this deck is empty, it will reshuffle, and some of these will go out again. And you do that towards the end of the game once all of the cards have been bought, meaning all of these corporations, the entire deck has been put out, all the corporations bought. You will score one last time. But let's talk about the last action that you can take. The last action you could possibly take on your turn if you want is to reorganize. To reorganize allows you to reshift and reform conglomerates of any type, but you pay 1 million per card. So there's 12 cards here, so you'd pay $12 million, and you could reorg any way you like. Now we see here, I've got a B and an E, a B and E. This one's just an E, B and E, and then we have some B and E's over here. Maybe I could reorganize this in any way that I want, so that I can have as many B and E's together as possible. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then these ones would just be E's, for example, but now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 B and E's, which if you remember when we looked at the profit, by doubling the B and E's, it goes from 8 to 16 million. So a lot of times towards the end of the game, you end up reorganizing to try to get some double points on a lot of the things there, and that's reorganizing. Oh, Sid Saxon has done it again. It's amazing that this game was originally came out in 1969. And you put it in today with modern board gaming design, how it's changed so much. And you take a game from a classic game like this that's very straightforward, takes 2 minutes to teach, but has so many layers of interesting things going on with it. Wow, it makes you say, wow, how many other games are like this that have been designed that long ago that still stand the test of time? Of course, Sid Saction doing Acquire and Sleuth, which I love, and this, and I'm the Boss, which I'm reviewing this week as well. Wow, it's just what an amazing job he's done over his lifetime designing great games that stand the test of time. This is no different. This is an excellent game. I love that it's easy to teach and it's relatively quick, but yet it's very, I don't even know what the word to say about it, but it feels elegant, even though it's so simple. It might sound weird to say it's such an easy game, but just the little things like matching up those smaller bills into symbols to do a set collection to make that a more powerful money brings interesting decisions on whether you want to maybe just discard one of those small bills to pick up 2 new cards, or should I hold on to it because if I get another one it's going to be worth 16 million. Just little decisions that have been built into that and different ways to balance the game. Trying to figure out the best way to put the different industries together on a conglomerate, but always looking at those letters, which I like to just call markets because it seems more thematic. And you're always trying to figure out ways to do that and looking, and then that take that component and stealing stuff from your opponent adds a lot of fun to it. Now I will say I like this game best as like 2 or 3 player. Because towards the end, when you're starting to do your brain burner aspect of what could I steal towards the end, and then how will I reorg, even just thinking about if you have a lot of corporations and a handful of conglomerates, sometimes it can be a little bit of a brain burner to figure out how to reorg in the best way, because you might go, if I do this, then I'll gain this million, but if I do this, I'll gain that million. That part of it can tend to be a little brain burnery. If you have AP, you might stop a little bit there and hold up the game. It's not terrible, but towards the end it gets a little longer in those last few turns, and so playing with it with the full complement of 6 or 5 probably wasn't, it's not my favorite. So I would stick to the 2, 3, maybe even 4 players with this. But if you do, it is an amazing classic game that's very inexpensive, that offers, I feel, a very good experience. It's fun, it's easy, clean, but yet elegant. It's hard to explain. You're just gonna have to experience it. Venture.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.